All right, let's dive right into this explainer. We're going to explore a pretty wild concept today. Why the exact skills that brought you your initial career success might actually be the very things holding you back from hitting that next level. Look, if you're tuning into this, chances are you're already a high achiever, right? You've put in the sweat equity, hit your targets, climbed the ranks. But maybe, just maybe, you've hit a plateau. It's like this subtle, invisible wall where your old, reliable playbook just kind of stops working. So today, we're going to unpack exactly why that happens, and more importantly, how to break right through it.
Think of this explainer as your you are here map for navigating the next phase of your career. We'll be hitting 5 key milestones today. First, the trouble with success. Then, the success delusion. Third, 20 everyday annoyances. Fourth, achievers versus leaders. And finally, practicing feed forward. Let's get into it.
Before we get deep into the modern corporate mechanics of all this, let's anchor ourselves with this brilliant quote from Shakespeare. Happy are they that can hear their detractions and put them to mending. I mean, he absolutely hit the nail on the head centuries ago. It perfectly sets the tone for Marshall Goldsmith's core thesis here, which is all about the art of accepting feedback, even when it seriously stings, so we can actually mend our professional blind spots.
Okay, Section 1, the trouble with success. Let's look at what's really going on when ambitious professionals stall out.
So our roadmap for this explainer comes straight from the insights of Marshall Goldsmith. And Goldsmith isn't just your run-of-the-mill consultant. He's basically corporate America's preeminent executive coach. We're talking about a guy who has personally worked with over 80 CEOs at the world's top corporations. And through decades of doing this, he found a truly fascinating pattern. He realized that high achievers at the very top, they rarely fail because they lack technical skill or intelligence. No, they fail because of unrecognized behavioral tics. Basically, the higher you climb in an organization, the more your problems shift from being technical to being purely behavioral. It's exactly like one of those maps at a massive shopping mall. You know, the ones that rely on that big red dot to show you where you are. You have to accept exactly where you stand in your career right now. Sure, you might be a hugely successful editor, or an in-demand financial manager, or a thriving executive. But to get to that next level, to become a truly great leader who inspires people, you have to brutally acknowledge the gaps in your behavior today. You just can't chart a course to a new destination if you're in total denial about your starting point. So the crucial point here is that highly successful people often suffer from a loss of what psychologists call proprioception. Now, physically speaking, proprioception is how you intuitively know where your arms and legs are in space. But professionally, it means people's inner compass just goes completely out of whack. They become totally clueless about how their behavior comes across to their colleagues. For instance, they might think they're delegating effectively, but their team literally just sees them shirking responsibility. Or they think they're holding their tongue to be polite, but others see it as cold unresponsiveness. They have completely lost touch with their own professional projection. Moving on to Section 2, the success delusion. Let's see how this lack of self-awareness creates the most dangerous trap for top performers. Now, this concept, it demands our massive paradigm shift, because we tend to have this almost superstitious belief about our own success. We tell ourselves, well, I behave this way and I achieve results, therefore I must be achieving results because I behave this way. We falsely assume that every little bad habit we have, whether that's being overly blunt or hyper-competitive, is actually a secret weapon that caused our success. But in reality, it's often just a flaw that we succeeded in spite of. Separating the behavior that actually drove your success from the behavior that is basically just along for the ride, that is literally the most important mental shift you can make today. Which brings us to Section 3, 20 everyday annoyances. Let's talk about those specific behavioral flaws. This is where we get into the agitation phase, the specific, everyday behaviors that actually alienate the people around us. These are the flaws we've been carrying around, mistakenly thinking they're our secret weapons. The source material outlines 20 of these everyday annoyances. And look, these aren't deep-seated psychological issues that require years of intense therapy, not at all. They are simple, transactional flaws performed by one person against another. Think of it like a corporate chamber of horrors, things like speaking when angry, passing the buck, or clinging to the past. If you do them once or twice, sure, people forgive you. But when you repeat them dozens of times a day, they slowly, inevitably chip away at all that accumulated goodwill you've built up, turning minor irritations into major career roadblocks.
We're not going to list all 20 right now, but these 6 here, they are universally relatable. Take winning too much, for example. That desperate need to win an argument even when it's completely beside the point. Or how about starting a sentence with no, but, or however? When you do that, you're secretly signaling to your colleagues, I'm right and you're wrong, which instantly kills their enthusiasm. Another massive one is adding too much value. Ever had a coworker pitch a genuinely great idea, and instead of just saying, wow, great idea, you say, that's a great idea, but it would work better if you did it my way. Boom, you've just totally deflated their ownership of the idea just to show the world how smart you are.
And so many of these bad habits, especially adding too much value or passing judgment, they actually stem from a deep-rooted information compulsion. We operate in this age of knowledge workers, right? Where we falsely equate simply speaking up with adding actual value. We end up prioritizing showing off our own intellect over actually helping the team move forward. We convince ourselves we're making people smarter, when in reality, we're just compulsively satisfying our own ego-driven need to be the smartest person in the room.
All right, Section 4, Achievers versus Leaders. Time to flip the script and focus on the solution.
This right here is the absolute crux of our journey today, making that difficult transition from an achiever to a leader. See, an achiever is intensely focused on themselves, their own performance, their targets, their personal needs. And honestly, that intense self-focus is exactly what gets you here. But what gets you there, to the next level, is shifting the focus entirely away from yourself and placing it directly onto the success of others. It's a tough pill to swallow, but the exact traits that make you a high-flying individual contributor will actively prevent you from becoming a great leader if you don't learn how to flip this script.
To actually build this leader mindset, you need highly practical habits. For example, let's take failing to give proper recognition, which is a classic achiever flaw. One of Goldsmith's highly successful clients came up with this brilliantly simple 3-step technique. Step 1, make a list of all the important people and groups in your life, your direct reports, colleagues, even your family. Step 2, write down their names on a single sheet of paper. Step 3, twice a week, review that page and honestly ask yourself, did someone on this list do something I should recognize? It's basically a structured, mechanical way to force your brain to start looking outward instead of inward.
And finally, Section 5, Practicing Feed Forward. How do we turn this insight into lasting action?
Because let's be real, insight without action is just trivia. When you look at that list of 20 annoyances, you're probably going to realize you're guilty of a few of them. We all are. But here's the secret. You do not need to fix everything all at once. The key is just picking the right thing to change. Whittle your list down to just 1 or 2 vital issues. Find the one annoying habit that is doing the absolute most damage to your reputation. Then, go to the colleagues it actually affects, explicitly apologize for it, and actively practice what Goldsmith calls feed forward. This means asking them for positive, forward-looking suggestions on how to improve that one specific behavior in the future, rather than just endlessly dwelling on past mistakes. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with this to chew on. Take a hard look at your own personal map. Out of all the behaviors we've discussed today, what is the one bad habit standing between where you are, here, and where you want to go, there? Think about it, choose it, and take that very first step toward mending it today. Thanks so much for joining us for this explainer, and we will catch you in the next one.